Have you ever felt invisible to someone you always put first? I mean, truly invisible, as if your presence no longer registers, your effort no longer matters, and your value has quietly been erased. You showed up, you listened, you stayed, you gave what you had, again and again, and still you were ignored, sidelined, or treated like an option instead of a priority. And here's the painful question most people avoid asking. How did it come to this? The truth is uncomfortable, but it matters. When we give too much of ourselves without boundaries, people don't see us as generous, they see us as guaranteed. And once someone believes they can access you anytime with no cost, no consequence, and no respect required, your value slowly disappears in their eyes. But what if I told you there's a way to turn this dynamic around? Not through arguments, not through begging, not through chasing explanations or demanding attention. In this video, you're going to learn 9 Stoic attitudes that create the reverse effect. These attitudes don't manipulate, they don't threaten, they don't play emotional games. Instead, they shift the balance of power quietly. And when applied correctly, they awaken something uncomfortable in the person who overlooked you, the fear of losing you forever. And the most important part, you won't need to perform. You won't need to prove anything. You'll simply return to yourself. These attitudes are rooted in Stoicism, an ancient philosophy built over 2,000 years ago, yet strikingly relevant today. Stoicism isn't about becoming cold or detached from life. It's about learning how to protect your inner world when the outer world tries to shake you. Ask yourself this: why keep exhausting yourself trying to change someone who refuses to see you? Stoics understood something that modern life keeps us forgetting. You don't control how others treat you, but you always control how you respond. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic teachers, said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters." This single sentence changes everything, because instead of chasing answers from someone who won't give them, you become the answer through your actions, your silence, and your self-respect. And when you move with this quiet firmness, something strange happens. The other person becomes unsettled. Doubt creeps in. The certainty they once had about you disappears. You stop being predictable, you stop being convenient, and suddenly you become unforgettable. Stoicism is not emotional coldness, it's emotional intelligence, it's dignity under pressure, it's strength without noise. And now let's begin with the first attitude, the one that immediately shifts the energy: strategic silence. Sometimes what disrupts a person the most is not what you say, but what you don't say. When you stop chasing, stop justifying your presence, and stop responding on impulse, the entire dynamic changes. Silence, when used with intention, is not weakness, it's composure. Especially with someone who's grown accustomed to your constant explanations, your instant replies, your unlimited emotional availability. When you go silent, without drama, without announcements, without passive-aggressive hints, you force the other person to sit alone with their own thoughts. And that is deeply uncomfortable. Because the one who believed you would always be there suddenly notices the absence of your energy. They miss the noise you made simply by existing. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nothing is as powerful as the silence of a man with a just cause." Silence creates space, and in that space, reflection begins. They start to wonder, they start to replay moments, they start to feel what they ignored. This is not disappearing, it's elevated presence. It's saying, "I am still here, but not at the expense of my dignity." In a world that never stops talking, the person who knows when to remain silent stands out more than anyone else. And this leads us naturally to the second attitude, one that redirects your energy back to where it always should have been. Now let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you truly focused on yourself without hoping someone else would notice? Because the second Stoic attitude begins right here. Focus on yourself. When someone spends too much time trying to be seen by someone who refuses to look at them, something tragic happens quietly. They drift away from themselves. Their days start revolving around reactions. Their mood depends on replies. Their worth begins to feel conditional. Stoicism cuts through this illusion. The moment you stop pouring energy into someone who ignores you and redirect it back into your own life, a powerful shift begins. Not externally first, but internally. And that internal shift eventually shows everywhere. This kind of focus isn't about posting better pictures. It's not about trying to look happy to provoke jealousy. That's still dependency, just disguised. True focus is silent. It's waking up and investing in your mind, strengthening your body, protecting your time, building something meaningful, choosing peace over chaos. And here's the paradox most people miss. The moment you stop wanting to be chosen, you become more desirable. Why? Because need repels, but self-respect attracts. The Stoics believed that real freedom comes from within, and when you start treating yourself as someone worthy of care, priority, and discipline, the people around you feel that shift, especially the one who once ignored you. They begin to notice you're no longer emotionally leaning on them. They feel your independence, and suddenly, your absence from their mental center creates tension. You've moved from chasing attention to inspiring respect, and respect is where power begins. Now we arrive at the third attitude, one that feels counterintuitive but works with undeniable precision. Controlled absence. Some people only understand the value of your presence when they feel the weight of your absence. Stoicism doesn't teach dramatic exits. It teaches timing. Controlled absence means knowing when to step back without resentment. No arguments, no emotional speeches, no final messages trying to explain your pain. You simply withdraw. Not to punish, not to threaten, but to protect yourself. When someone is used to your constant availability, your immediate replies, your unconditional giving, your emotional reliability, they take it for granted. And when that disappears quietly, something unsettling happens. A void appears. Seneca once said, "Sometimes, to be noticed, you must disappear." Disappearing with dignity is powerful. It forces reflection. The person begins to ask themselves questions they avoided before. Why are they gone? What changed? Did I miscalculate? And that doubt hits deeper than any argument ever could, because absence removes comfort, and comfort is what allowed neglect to exist in the first place. Now let's move to the fourth attitude, one that most people find extremely difficult and incredibly effective. Zero emotional reaction. If you want to unbalance someone who believed they had power over your emotions, stop reacting. No anger, no tears, no explanations, no defending yourself. Just calm. This doesn't mean you feel nothing. It means you no longer hand your emotions to someone who mishandles them. People who are used to provoking reactions don't know what to do when they're met with serenity. They expect resistance. They expect emotion. They expect engagement. When that disappears, control shifts instantly. Epictetus said, "Anyone can get angry. That is easy. But to control your response, that is strength." Zero emotional reaction isn't coldness. It's mastery. It's deciding that your inner peace is no longer available for disruption. And here's what happens next. Your calm begins to disturb them, because your peace becomes a mirror, and what they see reflected back isn't flattering. The one who tested you now feels exposed. The power they once had slips away. When you stop playing the emotional game, the game ends. And we're not done yet, because the next attitudes deepen this transformation even further. Now we move into the final phase of this transformation. These last attitudes don't just change how others see you, they permanently change how you see yourself. And once that happens, the dynamic can never return to what it was. Let's continue. Silent self-esteem. There is something quietly powerful about a person who respects themselves without announcing it. No speeches, no social posts, no need for approval. Silent self-esteem is visible in the way you carry yourself, in how you choose your words, in what you tolerate, and what you no longer do. When you begin caring for yourself with consistency, your body, your environment, your routines, something shifts internally. You no longer seek permission to exist. You no longer chase validation to feel real. And the person who once underestimated you starts to notice. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Before, you bent yourself into uncomfortable shapes just to be accepted. Now, you stand whole. Self-esteem changes the frequency of your presence. It sharpens your discernment. It guides you away from what drains you and toward what strengthens you. And people respond accordingly. Now let's talk about the next attitude, one that reshapes every relationship in your life. Unbreakable boundaries. Nothing alters a one-sided relationship faster than clear boundaries. Boundaries are not ultimatums, they are definitions. They say, "This is where I end, this is where you begin." When you decide what you will no longer accept and you enforce that decision without guilt, everything changes. The person who once tested your limits realizes the rules have shifted. Some will resist. Some will accuse you of changing. Some will try to guilt you into returning to the old version of yourself. That's how you know the boundary was needed. Epictetus taught that it's not events that disturb us, but our response to them. And choosing boundaries is an act of self-respect, not hostility. Those who only benefited from your softness will disappear. Those who value you will adjust. Boundaries don't push away real connection. They filter out false access. Now we arrive at an attitude that requires maturity and discernment. Selective generosity. Generosity is noble, but generosity without wisdom becomes self-abandonment. Stoicism teaches balance. Selective generosity means choosing where your energy goes, who receives your time, who has access to your emotional depth. Not everyone deserves the best of you. Seneca warned that generosity must be guided by reason, and when you stop giving endlessly to those who never reciprocate, something changes in the dynamic. Your presence becomes a privilege, not a guarantee. The person who once assumed unlimited access now feels the difference. They sense that something valuable has been withdrawn, and value is always felt most deeply in its absence. Now let's explore the eighth attitude, one that many confuse with cruelty, but is actually freedom. Powerful indifference. Indifference isn't hatred, it's emotional maturity. It's when someone who once had the power to disturb you no longer does. When you stop reacting to their behavior, stop caring about their approval, stop monitoring their actions, control disappears from their hands. Epictetus advised against wasting energy trying to please those incapable of valuing you. And this is where true peace begins. Your indifference isn't loud, it isn't performative, it's quiet detachment. And when the other person realizes they can no longer influence your emotional state, a void opens. Control is addictive. Losing it is unsettling. Your indifference becomes your liberation. And finally, we reach the last attitude, the foundation of them all. Unshakable self-confidence. This is not arrogance, it is inner alignment. True self-confidence comes from knowing who you are and acting from that place, without waiting for permission or validation. You enter a room and don't need to impress. Your energy speaks before your words do. Marcus Aurelius believed self-reliance was wisdom, and wisdom is visible in those who no longer seek external approval to feel whole. When you stop waiting to be chosen, something irreversible happens. You choose yourself. And that choice changes how others see you, but more importantly, how you live. The person who once underestimated you now realizes they've lost access to someone grounded, centered, and self-aware. And that loss is painful, because confidence doesn't chase, it doesn't explain, it doesn't beg, it moves forward. These 9 attitudes are not about revenge, they are about reclaiming control of your inner life. When you practice silence, self-focus, boundaries, and confidence, you transform, and when you transform, the world responds. Some will notice too late. Some will regret. Some will disappear. But none of that defines you anymore, because now you see yourself. And that is where real power begins. If this resonated with you, take a moment and reflect. Which of these attitudes will you start practicing today? Leave a comment, share this with someone who needs it, and subscribe if you want more content that strengthens you from the inside out. Remember, those who didn't value you yesterday may feel the loss tomorrow, but by then, you won't need their recognition anymore.